In this lesson, we're going to cover threats and vulnerabilities. Now, our job as cybersecurity professionals is to prevent threats from exploiting our enterprise system's vulnerabilities. Now, a threat is anything that could cause harm, loss, damage, or compromise to our information technology systems. And these threats come from external sources, things like natural disasters, cyber attacks, data integrity breaches, disclosure of confidential information, and many other incidents that can arise during our daily operations. Unfortunately for us, though, as cybersecurity professionals, we cannot fully control all of these threats, but we can try to minimize their impact by mitigating against them. Unlike threats, though, we do have the ability to control our known vulnerabilities within our systems. Now, a vulnerability is any weakness in the system design or implementation. As cybersecurity professionals, we can control vulnerabilities because they come from internal factors, things like software bugs, misconfigured software, improperly protected network devices, missing security patches, lacking physical security, and so much more. But these vulnerabilities are all within our control, or at least within our organization's control for us to prevent these vulnerabilities from being exploited by mitigating, transferring, avoiding, or accepting the risks involved with those vulnerabilities. This then becomes essentially a risk management decision as we start looking at how we're going to handle the vulnerabilities inside of our systems and our networks at large. Now, when it comes to threats and vulnerabilities, it's important to remember that where they intersect, that is where the risks to your enterprise systems and networks actually lie. This is a key point for you to understand, because your job as a cybersecurity professional is essentially to manage the risk of those systems and networks, and every decision that you make during your workday is going to involve either mitigating, transferring, avoiding, or accepting the risk within those systems. Remember, if you have a threat but there is no matching vulnerability to it, then you have no risk. The same holds true in reverse, because if you have a vulnerability but there's no matching threat against it, there is also no risk. Let's consider the example of trying to get to work in the morning on time. Now, your alarm clock goes off just after 6 a.m., and you hop out of bed. You get dressed, you eat your breakfast, and now you have to get from your house over to your office. But there are vulnerabilities and threats all around you that could cause a bad outcome to occur. And in this example, that would be you arriving to work late and your boss getting upset with you. Now, I know this seems like a pretty simple example, but there is a variety of things that could happen to cause this negative outcome to occur. And as you go through your day, almost every day, you're conducting risk management without even thinking about it as you navigate from your house to your office. So let's consider a few possible vulnerabilities that could cause you to not get to work on time. For example, you might have forgotten to fill up your car the night before, so now you won't have enough gas or energy or fuel to drive to work without stopping at a fueling station. We call this vulnerability a lack of preparation. Or you might have forgotten that it was your day to drop off the kids at school before you go into work. So this is something we might call a scheduling vulnerability. Or maybe you forgot to perform the routine maintenance on your car, and this could cause it to break down before you get to the office. And this we would call a vehicular vulnerability. There's lots of different possible vulnerabilities that could harm your plan of getting to work on time. But you do have control over these because these vulnerabilities were all created by internal factors that you could have done something about. Now, on the other side of the risk equation, though, there are several threats that are trying to prevent you from arriving to work on time. And these are usually going to be outside of your control. For example, maybe an impatient driver ended up causing an accident on the freeway, and now you're stuck in traffic, which is going to cause a delay to your commute, and you're now going to be late to arrive to work. This is a realization of that risk because somebody caused the accident. You can't prevent the other driver from having driven irresponsibly and causing an accident that delays your commute. That is outside of your control because it's an external threat factor. Or there could have been a natural disaster like an earthquake, and this causes the road between your home and your office to be completely destroyed. Now, I know I'm being a little bit melodramatic here, but hopefully you're starting to get the idea here. This is an external threat that's caused by the environment itself. You simply can't stop an earthquake. It's going to happen when the earth wants it to happen. So there is a threat out there that you won't arrive to work on time if that earthquake actually happens and that risk is materialized. So now that we have several threats and several vulnerabilities that we've talked about, we now need to think about what we can do about them. Well, if we're worried about being late for work, one thing we could do is wake up earlier. Instead of waking up at 6 a.m., we could choose to wake up at 5 a.m. That way, we have an extra hour of buffer time in case anything goes wrong, like we need to stop for gas, or we run into traffic, or we have to find an alternative road to work because our normal roadway is blocked because of earthquake damage. In any of these scenarios, that extra time buffer that we create by waking up an extra hour early can serve as a mitigation to any of these risks that might be realized. We don't stop the traffic jam or try to prevent the earthquake from happening, but instead we gave ourselves time to change our routes and still get ourselves to work on time. Now, this at its simplest form is risk management. It's finding different ways to minimize the likelihood of a certain outcome from occurring and achieving the outcomes that you really want to achieve. In the case of this daily commute, our outcome is getting to work on time without being late. In the world of cybersecurity, though, it means we want to provide a continuity of services to our end users, we want to maintain the overall security of our systems, and we want to protect our organizations from data breaches by minimizing our vulnerabilities or utilizing proper mitigating actions to minimize the impact that the threat would have on our enterprise systems if the risk is realized.